Chapter 4 deals with elasticity. And what elasticity is, it's a measure that economists use to show how responsive changes in demand are given a change in the price of the good. So for instance, if you were to have a large change in the response or in terms of demand to a change in price, you might call that good elastic. And conversely, if there's little change in the quantity demanded based on a change in the price, then that good is said to be inelastic. And there's also something called unit elasticity, where the response is the same percentage as the change in price. So for instance, in the case of an elastic good, the percentage change, which is the numerator of a fraction, in quantity demanded, would be greater than the percentage change in the price which is the denominator. So if the numerator is greater than the denominator, you'll have a fraction whose value is greater than 1. If the fraction is greater than 1, we say that that good is elastic. And the degree or the size will give us an idea of the magnitude of the elasticity. Conversely, if the percentage change in price results in a smaller percentage change in quantity demanded, that is to say the denominator is larger than the numerator, you'll have a fraction that is less than 1, and that good is said to be inelastic. Inelastic goods might be things like medical devices, where a 10% change will not, in the price of the procedure or the medical supply, would not change necessarily significantly the amount of that good or service required or demanded. So inelastic goods are things that don't respond to changes in price as much as elastic goods are. At the extremes, a perfectly inelastic good would be something like perhaps an antique or maybe even a work of art. No matter how much demand there is for the Mona Lisa, the supply will never change. And the only thing that might change is the price of the good, but there's no change because it's perfectly inelastic. A perfectly elastic good would graph as a horizontal line as opposed to the vertical line that the perfectly inelastic good would have. And that's a case where perhaps the price is set no matter what demand is, the price is going to be the same. So for instance, when the government controlled the price of gold, it was going for $32 an ounce. No matter how much demand there was, the price never changed. And so you had a perfectly elastic good in the controlled price of gold. Now, it is true as well that a particular good might have a portion of the demand curve where it is inelastic, as well as a portion where it is elastic. So depending upon where the change in price or demand is, you could have a different conclusion as to whether the good is elastic or inelastic. There are several determinants of price elasticity of demand, and they include things like substitutes. If there are more substitutes, typically, then the elasticity, the good is generally more elastic. For instance, if the price of Pepsi were to be significantly raised, then it's easy to switch over to Coke or RC or some other drink. So when you look at specific brands, you're likely to see greater elasticity than perhaps for an entire category of a demand. So Crest toothpaste might be more elastic than toothpaste in general. In addition to the availability of substitutes affecting elasticity, the proportion of price relative to income, generally the larger the expenditure relative to one's budget, the more elastic demand becomes because buyers notice a change in price more. So lower priced goods might be more inelastic than the higher priced goods. And whether or not the product is a luxury or a necessity, again, the more the good is considered a luxury, the more elastic the demand for that good is likely to be. And finally, the time frames involved. the more or the longer the time period under consideration, the more elastic demand will become. The same type of calculation is done with regards to price elasticity of supply. Again, the percentage change in the quantity supplied divided by the percentage change in the price is your elasticity of supply calculation. And here again, there is a likelihood that a particular good might be inelastic or elastic at different points along the same curve. The ease of shifting resources between alternative uses is very important in the price elasticity of supply, because it'll determine how much flexibility a producer has to adjust his or her resources and change the quantity supplied. So for instance, if there were demand, a farmer might be able to get more land or plant additional thing in the long run, but in the short run, it's a little tougher to all of a sudden ratchet up supply based on changes in price. So short run supply elasticity is more elastic than the market period, and that in turn is less elastic than long run supply. Long run supply is the most elastic because adjustments can be made over time and quantity can be changed more relative to a small change in price. And the producer has time to build perhaps new plants. The farmer has time to plant different crops. So elasticity of supply operates essentially the same way that elasticity of demand is. We're just trying to find out how sensitive demand or quantity supplied is in response to changes in price. Economists will also calculate cross elasticities. And cross elasticities of demand, for instance, refers to the percentage change in the quantity demanded of some particular good that results from some percentage change in the price of another good, a different good. If that cross elasticity is positive, that means that the two goods are substitutes. So for instance, a change in the price of Keurig coffee makers will have an impact on the price or the demand for K-Cups. A negative cross elasticity indicates that the two goods are complementary or go together. Oh, that is to say, the negative cross elasticity means the two goods are complementary. So the Keurig cups and the K-Cups and the Keurig coffee makers would be complementary goods, or goods that go together. So that would have a negative cross elasticity. Positive cross elasticity would indicate the two goods are substitutes, like Coke and Pepsi, Ford and Chevy, and other such things. And finally, if there's a zero or near zero cross elasticity, it indicates the goods are unrelated and that they're independent goods, or there's no correlation between the two.